Welcome back. In this section, we'll go through awesome techniques we use when we are looking for clues on social media. The aim of this and the upcoming lectures is that you learn to get as much information about the suspect. We're aware that there are countless platforms our target may use, however here we'll cover the most popular ones, meaning X, which is former Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, TikTok, Snapchat, and a couple smaller ones. So, without further ado, let's get to the first one. Even though X is full of bots, there are a lot of legitimate users. These users tend to tweet their lifestyle, their thoughts on things, pictures, and so on. On top of that, these users interact with others, providing us a lot of valuable information. Even though the external X analysis tools are no longer around due to X API changes, there are still techniques which can be used within X itself to perform OSINT on the platform users. So let's get going. When you are logged in, your user interface should look somewhat like this. It is similar to any other social media where you can just scroll through the timeline and that you have the For To page. Here you have the For To page and on the right you have the following timeline. However, our topic of interest is the search bar. So let's just do a sample query of football and hit enter. Now, we are redirected to a simple search menu. First off, we got the top section, where X shows us popular tweets that match our query. The next one is latest, which is the most recent posts mentioning our query, or if there is a user that matches our query, for example football123, then these will also appear here. The next one is people. That's pretty much how you can go through various profiles when searching for your target, either by name or how they are categorized. The next one is media, and so here we got pictures, videos and GIFs mentioning our search phrase. The last one is lists. Here on X, you have the ability to create lists containing various profiles. These lists can be either private, meaning only visible for you, or public, meaning visible to all the other users. Then on the right side we have a couple general settings. We can either search for tweets and any queries from just people we follow or from anyone. Then we can do location anywhere in the world or near us. Then we have something much more interesting and it is advanced search menu. In here we have options similar to the one we have in search engines such as Google or Bing. The first field is pretty much a basic search. It will look for all the words we put in the general search bar. Then we have a search for the exact phrase. If you remember, going for the first option would give us results from all over the website, whereas this one will only show us tweets and people who match the exact query we type in. Another one is any of these words. It is like the Google's OR search operator, meaning the word A or B or C and so on. Then none of these words excludes a word. Then we have hashtags. The next one allows us to choose a language in what we want the results to appear in. It is not that it will translate it for us, but it will only show us the results from one particular language. After that comes the account section. It comes in handy when analyzing the relations and interactions between two profiles. We can select from what accounts we want to see the tweets in the first one. It could be multiple accounts if, for example, we have a list of profiles that match information about our target, but we are not sure which one is finally the suspect's one. Then we have these accounts. So tweets directed at accounts we specify in this field, but keep in mind these are only the replies. The next one is, however, tweets from people that mention the account we specify. The difference is that user A can tweet something in a response to someone, then it will fall into the second category. Or they can just tweet something not in a response to anyone, but still mention a few accounts, and it will fall into the last category, which is mentioning these accounts. Next up is the filters section. In a case where we are looking for a particular tweet, we can turn on or off the replies, so it either shows them to us in our results or it doesn't. So if you don't want to see the replies, you just click on this one, you uncheck it, or if you want to see the replies, you just select it. Then we can either include the replies and original post, or we can only see the replies to the post. We can also include or not include links, and if we include, then we can set it to be only tweets with links. And that's it for the filters section. Now we have the engagement section. It is rather self-explanatory. We can choose if we want to see tweets with at least X amount of replies, Y amount of likes, and Z amount of retweets. However, sadly, we cannot set the maximum amount. The last one is the date section. This one is extremely useful. Let me explain. If a user is fairly active, they are likely to have even a few thousands of tweets. However, if you go to their profile and try to scroll down, X or Twitter will only let you see, I believe, their last 10 or 1200 tweets. To bypass that, we can use the advanced search option, meaning specify the user and then the dates from when till, here you would do the day of the last tweet you can see on their profile. And then you would do a search, and that's how you would be able to find tweets that wouldn't normally appear on their profile even if you scrolled all the way down. And that's how you would look for old tweets where X would refuse to show you them on their timeline. There are also some cases where a profile shows that it has Y amount of tweets, but you are not able to see them if you go to their profile. This can also be bypassed with the dates filter from the advanced search. Or maybe if you are working with law enforcement, this technique can be used to validate the suspect's alibi. Now, if we change anything here, let's say we do August 13th, and let's do 2021. We'll do minimum replies 2, and we apply some more filters. We'll just do only show posts with links. Now I'll do search. And as you can see, all those filters are applied within the search bar. This means even if X at some point removes the advanced search window, these operators might still work. It is important to notice that there is one more search operator that is not within the menu. If we open Google and go to Maps, I'll just open Google Maps. And let's do, for example, we'll do New York. We'll do search. Now we'll do something interesting. We'll go to the URL, and as you can see, we have Google Maps place New York, NY, USA, and then we have the coordinates. So I'll copy them just till the second comma. I'll do copy. I'll go back to X or Twitter or however you want to call it. And we can do something interesting here. We can type in geo. Let me just, okay, it's typing. So let's do geocode colon followed by the GPS coordinates, then followed by another comma, and then followed by the radius. So let's do 2 kilometers. And now I'll hit enter. And just let's remove the list and go to top. And here's my bad. We don't include the at. And let it load for a second. And the way it works, it shows us tweets that were tweeted within the 2 kilometers radius from the coordinates we typed in. So for example, if we wanted to do 1 kilometer, so let's just change it to 1, hit enter, and all those tweets were tweeted within 1 kilometer from those coordinates. For example, we can even do, let's do, for example, York in the UK, as it's much smaller. I'll copy the coordinates once again. Let's do copy. We'll paste them in here. And I'll hit enter. And as we can see, these are tweets that were tweeted in 1 kilometer radius from the coordinates we used. Also, as a side note, you don't have to go with kilometers, you can do miles, just do MI and then hit enter, and it will still work, so it doesn't really matter which one you're used to use. We had a case where we only knew the suspect's first name and where they were based. Using this technique, we were able to find their corresponding Twitter profile even though it didn't mention their last name. Now, let's not forget about the basics and let's move to some user's profile. So I'll just remove this and let's do football and hit enter. Unfortunately, this username has been suspended, so let's do anything else. So I'll do football and do enter. We'll go then to people and let's do just Liverpool FC, for example. And no matter whose profile you open on X, you'll see it in this format. unless at the moment of you watching it, they change the UI. So what can we see here? We have whom they are following, then we have who follows them, then we can see when they joined the platform, which used to be Twitter and not X, I believe, and each profile has a list of their posts, then replies, highlights sometimes, media and likes. However, affiliates is not as common. I think it's only applied when it's an organization or a company. But if you go to affiliates, you can see all their accounts affiliated with the main page. Now let's say you found your suspect's X account. What you can do is go to likes and see what they've been liking, who they have been interacting with, what they have been posting, and perform analysis of their user profile to see if they match the persona they're using on other platforms. If you are new to X-OSINT, this might seem like a lot to wrap your head around. So I encourage you to take your time, practice it on any profiles even if you don't have a real target for now, and when there is an investigation you are participating in, just apply what you have learned. That's it for this lecture, and I will see you in the next one. Welcome back. The topic for this lecture is Discord. For those of you who don't know, it's a messaging platform. It used to be mostly used by online communities, however after the pandemic hit and lots of people pivoted to remote work, it has become also a channel of communication within some businesses. It is nowhere close to Microsoft Teams, Zoom or Slack when it comes to the market share of messaging platforms for employers and employees, but it makes up for it with the many public channels where our suspect might be active. There are 3 traditional ways of using this app. These are via the desktop application, via the browser, and they also have an app for iOS and Android devices. When you're logged in, no matter via the desktop app or the browser, you should be presented with a user interface similar to this one. Starting from the upper left, we have the direct messages section. Then if we keep going down, we have the servers we belong to. So this account belongs to Hack the Box Discord server. Then if we want to add new servers, we can click on it, and then we can either join by an invite, or we can create our own Discord server. Now, if you click on a join a server, you usually need a link or a code. These codes are either distributed from people within a server, or you can find them by going to a few websites, which I'll show you in a minute. This is as if you have found out that your target is quite active and vocal online, then depending on what their area of interest is, you can find servers that fit that topic to see if they are on those servers or that other people are mentioning them. There are a few ways to do that. The first one is if we click and we go to explore servers, there's quite a few community servers we can look for here. And if you keep scrolling down, you can see, depending on the community, for example, for some video games and so on, you can also search in the search bar, or there are 2 more options. The first one is if you go to disboard.org here, or on the other alternative, there are thousands and thousands of servers indexed. You can either go by searching for them using the tags, for example, community, gaming, social, roleplay, and so on. We are not going to dive into those for now. Or you can search it using the search bar. The similar principle applies on discord.me, where you can also search for servers depending on the category, or you can search using the search bar. Now if we go back to Discord for now, we have one server we belong to. If I open it, we can see quite a different user interface. Let's say you joined a Discord server. You might be required to verify that you are a human, and keep in mind that some servers require that your account is phone number verified. This also can happen if you are trying to access it via a VPN or a browser that doesn't entirely align with Discord's criteria. Then when you are ready to go, on the left side you will see the server preview. It means you can see the channels within the servers, and there are a few types of channels on Discord. The first one is a text channel. So for example, this general channel is a text channel. In these kind of channels, people communicate via text messages. The next one is voice channels. This is where people talk using their voice. So let's see if we can find one here, and sadly we cannot find one here. However, if you go to any other server, you are likely to find voice channels there. The last important channel we need to be aware of is the announcement channel. Although it is somewhat like the text channels where someone with the administrator or moderator role has the privileges to write in those channels and make some sort of announcements. Now, if you look at the icons next to the search bar on the right, you can see that there's one particular icon saying hide members list, or if we click on it, it shows show member list. This list shows us all the members within a server and they are listed based on their roles. So for example, in this server, we have some Discord administrator, then we have some senior moderators, staff, and so on and so on. So if you keep scrolling down, you'll be able soon to see all kind of members. However, this one has quite a few different roles. But if you have a server, then all the members are likely to be in that list, just separated by different roles. Welcome back. The topic for this lecture is Instagram OSINT. Although there is not much information we can extract after their privacy changes, we can still achieve something even if the suspect's profile is private. Of course, if the profile is public, then you can easily look into their posts, friends, reverse look up pictures, see their tagged pictures, and so on and so on. But what do we do if it's private? First off, to see the content on the platform, you need a profile. I recommend setting up a burner account, as in case you interact with the target by accident, it would be a giveaway that someone is onto them. Once you are logged in into an account, go to their profile, and in our case it will be a fake profile named Ivy 2007. Now, their profile is private, so what can we do about it? First off, their profile got a description, but we'll get back to it in a bit. So for now, we need to focus on their username. First of all, we want to copy it. Then we'll navigate to Google. We usually start our investigation with just dumping the username in various search engines to see what we come across. First off, we can do it by simply pasting the name in the search bar. However, if we get a lot of fake positive results, we can just put quotes around the name. So for example, I'll paste in our username, I'll search for it, and we get something from Instagram. Then since those words are not appearing all over the page, we don't have to use quotes. But what have we found here? Thanks to the username being unique enough, we found their comment from Instagram. We can see that they commented under this profile's post, and we'll get back to it in a second as we'll come across this a few more times in our searches. The next step for us would usually be to use the technique to identify if this username is registered on any other platforms. We presented to you a few tools like whatsmyname.app in the previous sections, so we'll skip it for now. Then we would do another search query in a search engine of our choice. So I'll go to the search bar and I'll remove this. We'll do a site : Instagram.com and then followed by the username. So I'll just paste in the username and now I'll hit enter. This syntax pretty much is used to show if this user had left any comments on some posts. However, oftentimes it will just show us if the user has been tagged anywhere on Instagram. However, if this does not work, we'll just put quotes around the username and perform another search. The next attempt involves putting the @ sign right before the name as if you were to tag the person. This search also should bring us different kind of results depending on whom you are investigating. And I know throughout the course we learned quite a few search operators, but to maximize our results, it is good to know them. And if you are still struggling a bit, there is an Instagram search tool by Intel Techniques. For those of you who don't know, Intel Techniques is a website by Michael Basil, who is a well-renowned OSINT professional. I encourage you to go through his blog post to learn more about privacy and open source intelligence as a whole. Alright, so back to the tool. We can pretty much populate all the fields with our target username, and whatever button we click, it will perform a search for us. So I'll paste in our username and I'll click on populate all. As you can see, it pasted the name in all of the search bars. However, the first one will just open as their Instagram profile. The second one is outdated, but it used to show us their Reels page. Then we got the page with the pictures that are tagged in. However, if their profile is private, you need to try the outgoing and incoming searches, which are the next two ones. So let's just click on this one. So this will perform a search I showed you before we got to the tool. Now let's close this, and it will be the same for output, and then for incoming, it will be just with the @ sign. Now if we close this, here it lets us search this username in Bing, in Yandex, Twitter, Dumper, which is like a mirror page for Instagram posts. So let's just click on it, and the user is private, so we should not be able to see anything they posted. Yeah, and it's not loading even, so let's just close this. Then we have Tozu, which is an Instagram profile analyzer. So let's just keep it running for a minute and we'll get back to it in a second. Then we can get redirected to their followers and their following pages. Of course, if their profile is public, it will be very convenient to see who they are following and who is following them. Also, why would we use this tool when we can do it all manually? When it becomes a little bit monotonic that you are performing one search after another, it is a good practice to keep tracking that we applied the same methodology to every profile we come across. Now let's get back and see if this have found anything, and as we can see we got nothing. However, if we just, for example, do their example and we let it analyze, you can see how many posts a month they post, per week, per day, on what day they usually post, their top caption words, their user interests, which is another useful thing because, for example, if we need to find what the user is interested in to see in what communities they might belong to, this is one of few ways to go. Top caption words, pretty much the words they use the most in descriptions of their posts. Now if you scroll down, then you can see the most commented posts and so on, but it will need to be blurred because it is not safe for work, I guess. Now back to the tool, we get two more searches. The first one is user plus term and the other one is association. Both of them utilize Google to perform a search for our user, and it will use the site : search operator, but then we can specify the word or phrase of our interest. It is useful when the target has lots of posts, but we are looking for only those that are mentioning something. Let's say they allegedly robbed a 7-Eleven. We can put 7-Eleven in the search terms. And now if we perform this search, it will let us see if they have mentioned it anywhere in their posts or maybe in the comment section. Now the next one is a similar one. However, here the association is not with a word or phrase, but rather with other user. So pretty much if we want to see if Ivy interacted with Michael Basil, we would do Ivy and then here we would type in their username. Then we would hit associations and here we would see posts if there were any. Now let's close it for a second. At the end we have three more search buttons. The first one will simply search Instagram for any hashtag we type in. However, keep in mind that it doesn't have to do with our suspect. Then the next one is the IG terms button. This one will use Google to search for any terms we specify, but within Instagram, and it uses again site : search operator. The last one is pretty much also IG hashtag search, but it will use Dumper, which was the Instagram mirror page. So it will pretty much do the same thing as this one, but here you keep in mind that it won't know your cookies and it won't show you results based on your preferences and the data it collected. So I encourage you to take your time and go through this and see how they optimize your Instagram OSINT. However, there's one more thing we want to tackle. Oftentimes our suspect will leave some valuable information in their profile description. This could be city where they are located, their age, maybe their university, along with the graduation year. All of these can be further used in searching them on other pages, such as their university page, their county's criminal records, and so on and so on. OSINT is after all a journey of finding these little pieces of information and putting them together to achieve intelligence rather than just gathering information. It is important that you keep documenting your findings, as something we find early on in the investigation might come in handy later on. Alright, that's it for Instagram OSINT, and I will see you in the next lecture. Hey, welcome back. We have almost covered all of the major social media platforms. However, there are two more that we must go through. In this video we'll cover Facebook, and in the next one, Alexa will talk you through the TikTok OSINT. Probably all of you are familiar with Facebook. It is a platform where people post about events in their lives. It could be just a trip they took, their graduation, wedding, and so on. However, the most important part about Facebook is that it relies on real identities. Here people usually don't hide behind semi-anonymous nicknames and profile pictures taken from the internet. If we get a hold of our target's profile, we can learn lots and lots of information. We're almost guaranteed to learn what people they associate with, when their birthday is, where they work, what car they drive, and the list goes on. If they post pictures with their face being clearly visible, we can dump it into our reverse image lookups and facial recognition tools to see if they have any other accounts on the internet. With the real name, we can also perform criminal background checks because we will most likely know what city or county they're based in. If it's hidden on their profile, we can just go to voter records to figure it out. Alright, so one of the most important things when it comes to Facebook OSINT is the search bar. The common misconception is that you can only search people. For example, let's do Bill Gates. Now yes, the first thing that pops up is his profile. There we can open it and see what information he made public. We can get his posts, his about page, his mentions page, reels, photos, videos and more. Usually when we go to the about page, this is where we learn the most important information. Here we can usually find their birthday, the city where they live, their school, their family members and so on and so on. The next one is the mentions page, however it's mostly for the creators, meaning a way for them to interact with their fans. Then we have Reels, which is the same as on Instagram. Then we have photos, videos, then we have the more section. If someone is vocal on Facebook, we can go through their check-ins, meaning location they claim to have visited, the reviews they left, events they attended, and their interests such as music, sports, movies, books, and so on. But why is this important? Sometimes when we need to check their alibi, we can see if they posted that they were at some place, which could give us a clue. However, hopefully by now you have realized that everything here is posted in bulk, meaning we get no option to filter for any specifics. That's where the search bar comes in clutch. If you once again search for Bill Gates, on the left side we get quite a few filters we can utilize. For example, we can go to photos, and then we can, for example, set the tagged location, which means we can filter for one particular person or one particular search phrase if it was posted in one specific location. For example, if we were to search for a person and we suspect that they posted something from a trip to New York City, then we could type in here New York and then choose the right one, for example this one, and we can see anything that mentions New York and mentions Bill Gates. However, it doesn't have to be just from his post, it could be anyone that posted something about Bill Gates and New York City. Now let's close it. The same applies if we want to search for a particular post. We simply type in our phase of interest, let's do Tesla, and hit enter. Then we'll switch to posts, and we get quite a few filters to choose from. This includes location, the author, date, and so on. Now besides that, there isn't much to uncover from within Facebook. However, it is important to notice that each Facebook user has a unique user ID which can be used to perform further searches. Tools to identify that user ID come and go, but there has been a way of obtaining which has been reliable. So this time, let's just search, for example, let's do Porsche. We'll go with the first one, we'll open their profile, and once you're in the profile, there's a few things we need to do. First off, we'll just click anywhere on the page, but keep in mind to not click on any link or any hyperlink. So I'll click here, and I will click on the View Page Source. If you're doing it from any other browser, it will apply the same methodology. Once you open the page source, you'll do Ctrl F in order to search the page. Here, we'll type in user ID, and now we should get about 7 or 8 results. However, we are interested in the first one. So we'll select it, right click, copy, and now we need to navigate to Intel Techniques search tool, but this one is for Facebook. As I said, tools come and go, but Intel Techniques team is persistent and they try to keep their search tools up to date. So let's quickly skim through the basic functions. So same as with Instagram, we can populate all the fields with one search phrase, one username, or whatever we type in. We can just do, for example, let's do Porsche, and we can do populate all. Whatever button we click now, we get a tab pop up with the corresponding page. So let's do, for example, about, and give it a second. And what's funny, I misspelled Porsche, so let me just quickly fix it. I'll do populate all, and then let's do about. Now we can see the about page for Porsche profile on Facebook. Now, once again, why is this tool rather useful than going manually through those pages? Keep in mind that when we are performing many searches on multiple targets, we don't want to miss anything. And by going one by one here, we can make sure that we capture everything we need to know. The first part is literally the same thing we just covered on Facebook, so I'll just scroll down to this particular section. Here is where we need the user ID. First, we get a few simple searches of posts, photos, videos, and so on. These can be sorted by the most relevant ones or by the year. Now, why is the Facebook user ID important? There could be a case where the user has changed their name. However, the Facebook user ID remains the same. So even if they change their name and you are unable to find it via the search bar, but you save their user ID, you can still use it to find their posts, find their photos, find their videos, and so on. Now, let's skip the location for now and focus on those three search bars. These let us search for a Facebook user ID plus a search term. You can see that it will apply for posts, photos, and videos. So keep in mind we copied Porsche user ID. So let's paste it in the first one and let's go to the search term. Here, let's for example do Berlin. Now if we search for posts by keyword, it will search us for all the posts Porsche has posted and use the word Berlin, or it could be just Berlin tagged as the location. So I'll click on it. Let's give it a second to load. And as you can see, the first one is a post by Porsche which is mentioning Berlin. Now if you keep scrolling down, there will be more and more and more. However, here I think it's only tagged as a location, which we can't see as of now, but it will apply the same methodology. Now let's go back here. Once again, it is a very convenient option when we have quite some data to go through. If we want to perform location-based queries, we just go to a page such as, I have here saved up Berlin, Germany. No, not this one, this one. And what we want to do, we want to copy the code from the URL. So I'll copy this, I'll navigate to the tool, and I will paste it in any we want. So let's do photos by the location. I'll paste it in, and let's keep it by the most relevant one. Now I'll click on photos by location. Let's give it a second to load. And actually this location does not have any photos posted. So let's remove this and let's give now post a try. So I'll paste it in and I'll click on post by location. After it had loaded, you can see that we get posts from various people. However, you will have this blurred just out of respect for people's privacy, but I will keep this part where it says Berlin, Germany, as these are the posts posted by location. This is extremely useful when we are, for example, tracking a live event where something bad happened. This way we can stay up to date with the most recent things that are happening in a particular area. However, Facebook these days is not as useful anymore for searching events. It is as each year is getting more and more strict. Back in the day, you could just paste your suspect's email address or the phone number in the search bar and it would show you their profile. However, it's not the case anymore. Also, the technique we learned for verifying email addresses can sometimes work here too. If you just go to the login page, type in the phone number and the email address, we can get the user's profile pictures and sometimes the email. Oh, and one more thing, in case you need to download things from Facebook, photos are rather simple, as here we can just do right click and save the pictures, but for videos or reels, for example like this one, we have the extension we introduced you to. So pretty much you just click on it, it will detect the video. If not, you have to refresh the page and you can click on the little arrow pointing to the right and you can do a quick download. Also, if you want, there's an option to go with different quality of the video. Alright, that's it for Facebook OSINT. If you manage to get a hold of your suspect's profile by using the filters and narrowing down the list, you'll most likely uncover quite some interesting information about them. However, their policies will probably keep on getting more and more strict, so it's important to stay up to date within the OSINT community to learn what currently works. Alright, go practice and I will see you in the next video.
Welcome back. Let's talk about TikTok. Now this will be a rather simple lecture, as we are only going to discuss the basic use of TikTok. Now, TikTok is a Chinese video sharing social networking service which has become viral globally, and that's exactly the reason why we are covering it. It is used to create short music, lip sync videos, dance, comedy, and talent videos of 3 to 15 seconds. Now, posts accept and display comments, both of which require login for access, and there is a limited native search within the website, but we can formulate URLs to gain direct access to targeted details. That's why I always recommend, if you're doing OSINT over TikTok, to use URL search instead of actually using their search features on the website itself. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let's say that we are interested in a user profile John Johnson. Once again, we can do this. We can type www or HTTPS to start with the protocol, www.tiktok.com @John Johnson. So this is how we would search for the account. If you use the search option, it might not pop out. And here we get the account of John Johnson, right? Now, if you suspect your target possesses a username which includes just the name John inside of it, but do not know the exact profile name, the URL where we use the search option, so we do /search $Q equals John. So this will search for a username that has John within the username itself. So John is not really the full username, it's just a part of the username, and it will give us all of the results for that. So if I click on users right here, here it is. All of these users should have John somewhere in their username. Now, many users tag their posts with a keyword. So in order to search for a simple post that has a keyword or a certain keyword inside of it, we can use the tag option. So instead of /search after the TikTok website, we type /tag and then John. Let's say we're searching for John, and now we will have all the posts that have John as a keyword of their videos. Also, as we mentioned, the search field on the TikTok can be unreliable. So instead, we can formulate a URL with the search terms. We can do that by typing /search $Q equals John, or whatever we want to search for. And if you, for example, want to isolate this search to only display videos which include the name John, we can do this instead. So search /video $Q equals John. And now we should only see the videos that have John inside of it. And lastly, some TikTok users might broadcast live, and any current live streams can be found with the following URL, which is tiktok.com/live. Simple as that. We should see all the lives currently taking place. Alright, now Google also indexes individual TikTok posts. Let me just close this first. So as I said, Google also indexes individual TikTok posts, and there is a search query on Google that would present results which include a certain term within any post or author profile. This can be beneficial to discovering, for example, deleted posts. Now, to do that, we open google.com and we can type this query, site, column, and then tiktok.com and space John. If we do this, we will only get results for any post or user that has John inside of the post or inside of the username. So this might also be useful for your research. Now, keep in mind that it's not that useful once our query is John, but if it was something more specific, it would be useful, as we wouldn't really be getting a bunch of results, and if the username is unique, it would be quite easy to find it. Alright, now that would be about it for TikTok. These are just some basic things. We will show some more advanced TikTok research later in the course, but for now, just make sure to know that TikTok is also a valuable resource to use once performing open source intelligence. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture.
Welcome back. We're almost done with social media OSINT, however there are still a few platforms we need to dive into. They're not really comprehensive, so we thought we would put them into one separate video. So let's start off with Snapchat. If you found your suspect's username and dumped it into whatsmyname.app, you might have found out that there's a user with this name on Snapchat. Even though, due to the nature of this app, there is not much we can do here, however there are still a few queries we usually perform anyway. The first one is within Google, and as you might have already guessed that, it's similar to the one we ran against an Instagram user. In this example we do site:/snapchat.com followed by the username in quotation marks. In this example we'll do some celebrity who uses this app, so let's do David Dobrik, and I'll hit enter. Here most of the results will be the page to his profile, but Google crawlers index them from quite different locations. We can go through these and compare if maybe the profile descriptions differs, or we can have a look at their spotlight or even check the Google images to see what pops up there. So let's give it a try. And as you can see, we see some pictures we could potentially use in the investigation. So let's go back for a second. And keep in mind, most of the time it will be a hit or miss. However, the next approach we can take is to go to this exact link. It is story.snapchat.com/search?Q =, and here we type in a keyword we're looking for. This is exactly the same as if we clicked here and search for something. However, most of the time it's really a hit or miss because this feature usually does not even work. So let's do, for example, we'll do OSINT, I'll hit enter, and we got no results. Even if we do something more popular, then we are still likely to not get any results. However, the most reliable and useful option Snapchat has got to offer is their map. This is as sometimes we'll be monitoring some event or a criminal activity that happened in some place, and since people in this generation tend to carelessly post everything to the internet, we might be able to find some clues on the Snapchat map. Sadly, the only way to access it at the time of the recording is via the phone app. So on my phone I will navigate to Snapchat, just give me a second. I will click on the little pin in the bottom left and we should see the maps. Now, for example, if we zoom in around the San Francisco area, so let's keep zooming in. And the way it works, we get different colors. These colors depend on how many people posted something from that particular area. As you can see, there are 3 bright dots here, so it is likely that people posted stories from there. However, you want to keep in mind that these are deleted after 24 hours, so if you need to, you can screen record it in order to store it as a piece of evidence. Now, if you click on anywhere, it should show you the story from that area. Let's load, we get some video from the bridge. So let's minimize it for a second and let's get back to the browser. The last thing we usually do when attempting OSINT on Snapchat is to simply look up their profile, as there is a chance they posted a story which could be visible to everyone. To do that, we go to this exact link, which is story.snapchat.com/s/ followed by the username. So let's copy it, let's paste it in the URL, and then I will do David Dobrik and hit enter. Now as you can see, this page popped up and we can now scroll to his different stories he posted within the last 24 hours. So let's just stop it for now. As you can see, it's important to document whatever we come across, as you know, something that might not seem important now might come in handy later on. Alright, but what about Tinder? It is a very popular dating app and oftentimes people don't realize but their profiles are public and can be shared around. However, you can forget about spoofing the location to find your target, as Tinder has become so much more restricted, and even trying to set up a profile with a VPN might result in asking for endless verification. Another aspect is the phone number. Without a VPN on, we can use voice over Internet Protocol numbers such as Skype, Google Voice, and so on. Luckily, they offer an in-browser version in case you don't have a burner phone. If you care about your privacy, ideally you want to set up an account on a public Wi-Fi in a library or internet cafe. If you want to use your own pictures, you can also give up privacy. However, using pictures of someone from the internet is rather unethical. There are two solutions we go for. The first one we used is text-to-image AI to generate pictures of our sock puppet. One of the tools to do this is Tensor.art. It's pretty flexible and the results are hard to distinguish from a real person. There's also another option, which is to contact someone via social media or Fiverr and pay them to take a few selfies, which then you'll use for your profile. However, you want to have their consent for using them on a dating app. And usually it will work as long as you explain to them your motives. However, there is one problem with that option. If our target is sophisticated and knows about face recognition tools like PimEyes or FaceCheck ID, they might figure out that our profile is fake. So creating fake pictures with Tensor.art doesn't take long and they walk you through each step, so if you are interested, go check out their website. Now, if you live in the same city as the suspect, you can try your luck by swiping and hoping to find them. We had a rather time-sensitive case where we managed to reverse look up pictures from their social media profile to establish the area where they were usually around. Around the afternoon, we drove there and then started swiping through people in a 3 to 4, mile radius. However, keep in mind that the free version only gives you about 100 likes a day, and the more people that don't like you back pushes you down the profile list. Now back to the story. After some time, we came across a profile that matched our suspect's social media presence. With that, we scrolled down their profile and at the bottom there was a button to share their profile. We copied the link and opened it on the laptop. If you're at this point where you have the target's Tinder profile, there are a few options. The first one is to reverse lookup images as shown in the images section. With that, we can get a hold of other profiles they might have on the internet. Then we can dump their pictures with the clearly visible face into facial recognition tools to achieve a similar result, which is further enumeration. Then there's one more thing we can extract. Right away, I want to give a shout out to Michael Basil for this one, as we have not discovered it ourselves. And pretty much if we go to any user profile, which in this case this one is fake obviously for the privacy reasons, we can right click, go to the page source, now we'll do Ctrl F and we'll do birth. As you can see, we found birth date, which is for this one 1991 May 27th. Although they could be using a fake one, but it's still a good piece of information to have in the investigation. Alright, that's it for other platforms. Regarding other dating apps such as Bumble or anything that your target might be using, this same methodology will mostly work. This means including looking up the images, playing with the location and performing facial recognition searches. But on the bright side, these might not have as tight security requirements when setting up an account. Alright, that's it for this lecture. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.